To vax or not to vax. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was quoted in Rolling Stone saying unvaccinated players should be removed from their teams. He went on to CNN and explained why.
I don't think that they are behaving like good teammates or good citizens. This is a war that we're involved in, and masks and vaccines, they are the weapons that we use to fight this war. And when you're not going to be cooperative with that, you're working against the effort to make everybody safe. And, we can't have that. That doesn't work for everybody.
Okay, here's Kyrie Irving when he was asked why he's not getting vaccinated.
Obviously, living in this public sphere, there's just a lot of questions about what's going on in the world of Kyrie, and I just would love to just keep that private. I'm not able to be present there today, but that doesn't mean that I'm putting any limits on the future of me being able to join the team.
I thought this was the best way to put it. Like, Damian Lillard is a guy who he wasn't great in the Olympics. He did drop a new rap album. There's all kinds of talk about where he'll play. And to this point, he's remained steadfast and loyal to Portland. And he's been a guy that's like, look, hey, I'm a man of my word. If I want to be traded, I will tell you I have not said those things. I'm trying to think who he relates to in previous generations of the NBA. But he's a guy that I think everybody likes and respects and thinks is a real dude. Take a listen to what he said about his decision to get vaccinated.
I have a lot of people in my family that I'm tight with and that I spend a lot of time around, and I'm just not going to put their health or their lives in danger because I want to hold a big research when as a kid I had to get shots my whole life, and before I went to college I had to get shots, and I couldn't tell you one thing about any of them. So if it's something that I've had people in my family actually die and people actually lose their lives to it, like I'm not, and it's a way for me to protect myself and the people that I love, I'm gonna do it. It's pretty simple.
Pretty simple, right? Which is really the hypocrisy of all of these guys. Yeah, you're not an anti-vaxxer. You're not. You've been vaccinated. Anyone who's ever been to college knows you have to be vaccinated before you go to college. Everyone. That's how they roll. So, and you were vaccinated when you were a little kid as well. If you grew up in the States or if you came over and you migrated or immigrated to our country. All of these things actually happened. So what you're doing, and this is where, like Clay Travis used to work with us, and I consider him a friend, but he put out some stats today about how less and less people trust Joe Biden. That's because of what you're doing. It's awful. It's wrong. This is not hard. It's not hard at all. Don't make up any conspiracy theories or say what's in it or say that it's not approved or all this other stuff. It is. And it dramatically lessens the chance that you get really, really sick from this thing that over 500,000 Americans have died from. This is not, again, it's not hard. And that's what Damian Lillard is saying. He's like, look, I'm not a scientist. I'm not trying to conduct some study. I'm not trying to be pro or anti whoever's in government or not. I got people around me. I'm trying to be unselfish. Having the vaccine, doesn't having the vaccine doesn't actually probably affect him all that much. But if it affects somebody close to you, or it affects the general population, or the chance that this thing metamorphosizes itself into something worse, and I'm one of the few guys that didn't do it, do you lock your car doors at night? I struggle with this because I lived in Connecticut for 12 years, and I never locked my car doors. I didn't. I felt super safe. And then somebody breaks into your car and you're like, man, why didn't I lock my car doors? Locking your car doors dramatically lessens the chance that somebody goes through your stuff. Do you have insurance? Of course. Well, I don't like mandates. And if you want to drive in this country, you have to have insurance. Well, I've never hit anybody. I drive smooth. It doesn't matter. Why do you do it? You do it because in the rare case that you get into an accident, you are covered there. Everybody's covered. You're still going to get medical treatment. This is just a way to know beforehand who's going to pay for it. So I I think it's really interesting here that Damian Lillard's like, he ain't going into science. He's just like very realistic, and that's where I think most people are. Like 75% of the country vaccinated is probably, the number's probably higher as of now. That was as of a couple weeks ago. But what happens is that small percentage that believes somehow their civil liberties are being violated, they make it so loud and so obnoxious that it seems like there's more people than there actually are. Yesterday, Andrew Wiggins, I stand for something. Well, what do you stand for? Well, that's personal. Then you don't stand for anything. You just stand for, to everybody else, you stand for, I don't want to get vaccinated. I know more than scientists and doctors and people who study this thing for their entire lives. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. So, yes, Jason Stewart.
Doug, don't you find it interesting that Damian Lillard chose not to say that it's a private matter, that those who get vaccinated are more than happy to share why they have, and those that don't are very uncomfortable sharing why they have not? And that's kind of the trend around the country, I know, but in our sphere, our sports sphere here, NBA players who have not been vaccinated are getting real defensive and going to the privacy matter.
Well, the one guy who didn't was Jonathan Isaac, and he went into something which is like, I thought it was very smart. He's a really smart guy, went to Florida State, been in the league for a little bit, obviously coming off of a devastating injury. And his thing was like, look, this is not political. This is just me. It's not going to affect me. I have immunities to it. Like, all of that is great. Very reasonable. Okay. That's still not a reason for not getting the shot, when the reason you get the shot is so that it doesn't morph into something worse. That's it. Sometimes you got to do stuff you don't want to do for the greater good. But he's the one guy I will point out that I have heard that, he didn't get super defensive about it. He just said, like, look, here's who I am. You get defensive about things because you're saying you're out of your element. It's like, well, I don't talk about stocks and money movement and things. I try not to, because I know the more I speak, the more you'll go like, he really doesn't know what he's talking about. You're right. You know what I do for managing my money? I hire somebody. And then I have an accountant who keeps an eye on that guy. And I have the guy who manages my money keep an eye on my accountant. And they don't work together normally. Why? Because they know more about it than I do. It's like, if you want your kid to be coached in basketball, you give it to me. And if you think you know more, okay, then coach him yourself. But you hire people that know more about something than you do, and you trust them. You keep an eye on them. But this idea that, well, I'm not going to be, you've been vaccinated several times over. You all have. Well, listen, that's different. You're right. It wasn't a global pandemic right now on smallpox, but MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, we've eliminated them. By the way, Jamie Collins just got released. Did you guys see that? So I think Lillard presents the very unselfish, matter of fact, this is the argument. And meanwhile, the reason that people don't want to state their cases, they don't have a strong case. Now, many of them will go and listen to Jonathan Isaac, and this will be their argument. But I thought Lillard made some really, really good points. And I think you can make it, it's exactly, that was my thought process when they became available to the public. And we could have, we have, because we're technically in the media, whatever, I could have cut in line and gotten the vax very early on. I just didn't feel great about it. So I waited until the very first day in which anybody could get in California. I got an appointment the night before. I drove up and I got the Johnson & Johnson, and then they'll have a booster and I'll get that. And I don't normally get the flu vaccine. And I'm not trying to tell you I'm a hero. I'm not telling you I know more than anybody else. You're just playing the percentages here. I have a mom who's a senior citizen. She was frightened. I got to see her in person like 3 times in almost 12 months. She's immunodeficient in some ways. And it's not just about her. It's about any other person. And that's really what Damian Lillard had to say. Yes, John Ramos.
I was just thinking to myself, are there any, and they may have said this already, I'm sorry if I'm not following it to the 100%, but is there something in their contract, like for Andrew Wiggins and for Irving, that they're not going to play in half the games? Because isn't half the games home?
Yes.
So they're going to miss, I mean, as of right now, that could change, correct? But as of right now, they're going to miss half their games. Isn't there some sort of like contract that they're obligated to like play and or give back money? Or I don't know. I'm asking you. Do you know anything about why they would just give up that for this?
I don't know how much they would have to give up. It comes down to the wording of the contract and the agreement between the Players Association and the NBA. And I don't know what the clause in the contract is. My guess would be both will be vaccinated before the first day of the season. And there's been several reports that that's what's expected to happen. I don't see how Andrew Wiggins plays in San Francisco for the Warriors not vaccinated. I don't see that happening. Kyrie's a little different, but not much different, especially because Wiggins already tried the religious thing and that didn't work. Byron, do you know the answer to that one? Do you know what happened?
No, I don't. I wish I did.
I don't either.
I saw where Mike Bass in the NBA office sent a tweet today saying basically that it's a collective bargaining decision for the vaccine mandate, and that the players' union is deciding to not work with the mandate. So they're basically just putting it back on the union's blame here.
Yeah, and then the union's going to put it on the cities, right? They'll put it on the local government and say, like, look, our hands are tied here, right? Sorry, we'd love to have you play, but, as long as you go through the steps. I don't know anybody who wants to be tested constantly. I don't know anybody who wants to wear a mask constantly. And basically what this is what the NFL has done as well, which is you put enough pressure to where you go like, look, you can either get tested all the time and be miserable or take a vaccine and then you get to play basketball.
Will they list Kyrie as out with COVID management if he misses those 41 games?
I don't know. I mean, that guy, is there anywhere else in the NBA he could play? And yet, right now, he can't play in half their games. Because and I believe it to be true. I believe that if you trade him, he'll be like, nah, I'm good. I actually think that's true. So you can't trade him. And you can't play him in half your games. Congratulations, you landed Kyrie Irving. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. Doesn't feel like the answer is that hard. And sometimes we do this as people. Have you guys ever read the book Blink? Right? The book Blink is another Malcolm Gladwell one. And the basic premise of it is when you look at a problem, the first solution is usually the right solution. And then you complicate it with your brain trying to figure out some other shortcut or some other theorem and how to do it, right? All those things. That's what this is. That's all this is. The first and most obvious solution. Like there's a reason that other countries are doing whatever they can to get our vaccine. It doesn't eliminate the virus. It doesn't completely solve the problem, but it makes it far, 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 far less likely that you're going to be hospitalized or that it's able to metamorphosize into something else.